Jameis Winston in trouble. And sacked.
The ladies, they supposed to be silent, polite, gentle. But my men supposed to be strong.
Wiggins now 3 for 3 from 3.
Everyone thinks that the WNBA is one big lesbo party.
One thing I want to reiterate is that this was my personal experience. It was how I felt. It was how I perceived things. And it's, you know, that's really just where it comes from.
Dr. Nasser preyed on these young girls.
He assaulted me more than 12 times.
It's very difficult to come forward against somebody who's as prominent as he is.
The treatments he performed for his sexual gratification were not to facilitate my healing.
This guy is disgusting. This guy is despicable. He is a monster.
Welcome to Outside the Lines. I'm Ryan Smith in for Bob Lee. If you're a kid and an NFL star comes to visit your classroom, it's cause for celebration, your own personal Super Bowl. Tampa Bay Buccaneer Jameis Winston knew this when he stopped by Melrose Elementary in St. Petersburg, Florida on Wednesday, hoping to inspire a class of 3rd through 5th graders with the message that they can do anything, be anything they want to be. But when the kids' attention began to wane, the former #1 pick's message badly missed the mark.
Okay, I know I got a lot of people like this. All my boys, all my young boys, stand up, man. The ladies sit down, sit down. But all my boys, stand up. We strong, right? We strong, right? Okay, all my boys, just tell me one time, I can do anything I put my mind to. A lot of boys don't supposed to be soft-spoken. You know what I'm saying? One day y'all gonna have a very deep voice like this. Right now y'all talking like this, but one day y'all have a very, very deep voice. But the ladies, they supposed to be silent, polite, gentle. But my men supposed to be strong. Okay, so I want y'all to tell me what the 3rd rule of life is. I can do anything I put my mind to. Scream it.
Girls are supposed to be silent and gentle. Boys are supposed to be strong. And saying that boys shouldn't be soft-spoken seemed to contain mixed messages. Now, it doesn't help that Winston has a checkered past with women accused of sexually assaulting a Florida State student in 2012. He was never charged, but he settled a lawsuit with the woman last year. Now, Winston has since explained his comments, saying he wanted to talk to a distracted young man without singling him out, so he asked all the boys to stand. And he added, "During my talk, I used poor word choice that may have overshadowed that positive message for some." So let's bring in Tom Jones. He is a sports columnist with the Tampa Bay Times who wrote about the Winston speech today. All right, so Tom, there were some interesting things coming out of that about this reaction in that classroom. What were the girls saying in that classroom?
Well, one girl in particular turned to her teacher while Jameis Winston was talking about boys are supposed to be strong. And she looked at her teacher and she said, "I can be strong too, right?" And that was the part that was really heartbreaking for me. When you look back at what Jameis Winston said, I thought 99.9% of his message was really positive. Even talking to the young men in that room, telling them that they can be strong, they can do anything. That's a great message. Telling them to do well in school, to trust in God, to be anything they can be. That's all tremendous. But when you talk about girls being silent, the gentle and the polite part, I think most people can live with that. But when he says girls are supposed to be silent, that's when the antennas went up in the room for a lot of people.
Yeah, and sometimes that's the language that kids hold on to
Sure.
when they hear that from someone like Jameis Winston. What's been the reaction in Tampa to your story?
Well, mostly it's been negative towards me. I would say probably about 70-30 criticizing me. And I understand some of where that comes from. Look, Jameis Winston is on his off time. He doesn't have to go to a school. He could be hanging out in Hawaii right now. He could be playing video games on his couch all afternoon if he likes. He doesn't have to go to schools, and he did this on his own. I think it is important to point out the Tampa Bay Bucks didn't set this up. He went on his own to this school, didn't invite the entire media. Only the Tampa Bay Times was there. And I understand that fans look at this and saying, look, he's doing a tremendous thing for kids, and you're picking out one word. Unfortunately, I think that one word did resonate with people in that room, including, and hopefully not too many, young girls in that room, and young boys for that matter.
Yeah, and Tom, you applaud the effort of an NFL athlete getting out there and speaking to kids. You just hope that they really think about the words they use when speaking to folks that are so young. Tom Jones from Tampa Bay Times. Tom, thank you so much.
Thanks, Ryan.
And today, this story is sparking outrage across the world of women's gymnastics. Prosecutors have filed 22 new counts of first-degree criminal sexual assault against Dr. Larry Nassar for allegedly abusing young girls. The former USA women's gymnastics team doctor is being arraigned today on charges that for 2 decades he improperly touched young girls. Nassar specialized in treating elite USA gymnasts like Carrie Strug's famous ankle injury in the 1996 Olympics in Atlanta. The claims shocking the conscience, alleging he used his hands in their private areas under the guise of providing medical treatment. Those new claims involving 7 alleged victims, 5 under the age of 13. If convicted, he faces up to life in prison. Now, we say new charges because authorities added these to others Nassar already faced: sexual abuse of a minor under the age of 13 and child pornography possession charges. In all, 28 felony charges and indictments. Claims against Nassar tainting Bella and Marta Karolyi's scandal, head coaches of the powerhouse USA Olympic team that took home 12 medals last summer in Rio. Some gymnasts saying abuse took place on their ranch under their supervision. Now, the Karolyis have denied those claims, and the charge against Nassar could just be the tip of the iceberg, according to prosecutors. In Michigan, where Nassar previously worked, investigators are looking into more than 80 sexual assaults involving Nassar.
These charges are a result of Dr. Nassar's assaults on young women athletes who came to him for medical treatment to recover from injuries. Instead, Dr. Nassar preyed on these young girls. Dr. Nassar used his status and his authority to engage in horrid sexual assaults under the guise of medical procedures. This guy is disgusting. This guy is despicable. He is a monster.
Well, joining us now for more on this story is Jamie Dancher. She won a gymnastics bronze medal in the 2000 Olympics. She says that she is a survivor of Dr. Nassar. Rachel Denhollander is one of 18 girls and women who filed a federal lawsuit against Dr. Nassar. She was a 15-year-old club-level athlete when she was treated by Dr. Nassar in 2000. She was also one of the first to file a criminal complaint against him. And also with us, Morgan Stewart is a partner at Manley Stewart and Finaldi, the firm representing Jamie and others who have sued, saying they were abused. Thank you all so much for joining us. Jamie, I want to start with you. You started seeing this doctor back in the 90s. How old were you, and what did he, in your mind, what was your experience with him?
Well, I made USA Gymnastics national team when I was 12. I believe I started seeing Dr. Nassar when I was 13, and that was at the Karolyis ranch. And I basically had a back injury, and he said that my hips went out of alignment, and that's when the procedure started.
So he does this procedure on you, and tell me what's going through your mind as you're experiencing this man touching you in these areas that you know are not right for a man to be doing.
For me personally, I trusted him as a USA Gymnastics doctor. I actually never really doubted or questioned what he was doing. You know, it was a privilege to not only get coached by all the national team staff there, but it was a privilege to see Dr. Nassar as well.
Okay, so for you, this was a man in power, and you thought, hey, he's just doing what I think a doctor needs to do to help me, especially at that young age.
Correct, and not only amount of power, but he was, you know, the culture they created there, not only at the ranch, but the whole culture in USA Gymnastics was very intimidating. You know, it was based on fear and control. And so seeing Dr. Nassar was actually something I looked forward to, because he would joke around with us and would actually like sneak us food and candy at times. And you know, I wasn't afraid to really smile around him. Just it felt like he was on my side.
Okay. And Rachel, you have said that Dr. Nassar abused you several times. How old were you when this started, and what happened?
Yes, I was just after my 15th birthday when I began seeing him, and it was also for a back injury. And he would penetrate me repeatedly during these procedures for extended periods of time. And there was external genitalia contact. There was a time he went up my shirt, things that are very outside the bounds of medical context. But really what I think the story is here is not so much what happened to me individually as it is how this was allowed to happen. The circumstances that allowed Larry Nassar to be a predator for decades. And what I find most interesting about this situation is that you have not one but two institutions, USAG and MSU, who both had the ability to stop Nassar long before he got to most of the women that he preyed upon, and both of them failed egregiously to do so. And I think those are the dynamics that we really need to be paying attention to as a society so that we can be understanding how do we prevent something like this from happening in the future.
And by the way, we invited USA Gymnastics to join us today, but they were unable to provide us with a statement, with a representative. They did issue a statement, actually, that reads in part, "We are outraged that a physician would exploit his patients in the alleged manner. As we have previously said, when USA Gymnastics learned of athlete concerns regarding Dr. Nassar, we reported him to the FBI and dismissed him from further involvement with USA Gymnastics. USA Gymnastics has cooperated fully with the FBI and other law enforcement agencies." They say also, "We are determined to strengthen standards throughout the sport." Morgan, when you see that statement, what's your reaction to that?
My reaction is that USAG is putting out a PR piece. It is nothing more than a statement to show something favorable to them. What in reality we know is that on multiple occasions, USAG, as Rachel said, had the opportunity to stop. They are, in effect, a mandatory reporter under multiple state laws, and they knew at a minimum, they admit they knew at a minimum for 5 weeks that Dr. Nassar was a serial predator that needed to be stopped. They didn't take action. That's at a minimum. We know far more than that the abuse goes back many, many years, reported abuse, that nobody took action in any institution that Dr. Nassar was affiliated with.
Okay, and Rachel, do you believe that the Karolys knew specifically what Dr. Nassar was doing to you, to others?
I was not abused at the Karoly Ranch. I was a club-level gymnast, and I don't want to speak specifically to what Karolys knew, but I do think it's very important to note that the issues with USAG and their child protection policies, they're not limited to Nassar. It really is a cultural problem at USAG. There are a lot of factors that we can look at to see this. Indy started an incredible investigation that really sparked this whole thing, where they found that over a 10-year period, USAG had received complaints of sexual assault and sexual misconduct against 54 coaches, 54 member coaches, and they had not reported any of them to the authorities. In fact, Director Penny testified under oath in one of those pretrial hearings, one of the pretrial hearings for William McCabe in his deposition. Director Penny testified that they did not. They had a practice of not reporting these allegations because he wanted to, quote, prevent a witch hunt against coaches. And so we know that they have this policy. If you look at their child protection policy, it does not require mandatory reporting. There's actually a section in it that indicates that gymnasts should be encouraged to confront their coaches themselves if they have questions about the conduct, except in the most egregious circumstances. So you see all these factors really coalescing to create a culture in USAG where the victims are not prioritized.
Yeah.
And that has serious ramifications.
Because the victims always need to come first. Jamie, I want to also, I know you stayed at the Karolys Ranch. I just want to get your thought on that. Do you think the Karolys actually knew what Dr. Nassar was doing to young women?
Just like Rachel, I can't say whether they knew for sure, but they seem like they turned a blind eye to it. And they definitely didn't do anything to enforce their policies, which are too lenient in my opinion anyway. I was abused at the ranch many times, and there were times where he was abusing me in my own room, in my own bed. So that tells you right there. And no one was checking to see if he was there alone or not. And none of the other coaches were around making sure that he wasn't in the room alone. They didn't do anything to protect us athletes there.
Right, that in and of itself is stunning, that any doctor would be allowed in your private room to give you treatment at such a young age. Rachel, you mentioned the things that need to happen. What specifically can USAG do right now to protect victims and put them first?
I think Senator Feinstein's letter to Director Penny gives an excellent starting ground to make mandatory reporting mandatory, to take leadership, and to set the example. One thing that I would love to see both USAG and MSU do, and that I find most heartbreaking in this process, is that when this evidence came out, that USAG had a policy of not reporting predators, not reporting people that they had allegations against. And when it came out that there had been multiple gymnasts and athletes that had complained to MSU since at least as early as 1997, for 2 decades, MSU officials in some capacity in the athletic department were receiving these reports of complaints against Dr. Nasser. In both of these cases, these organizations had the ability to simply speak to an issue that's really plaguing culture. Childhood sexual abuse is rampant. And these organizations could have stood up and taken responsibility for what happened under their watch. They could have shown true leadership by saying, this is what we did wrong, and these are the consequences, and here's what you can do differently. And really taken that first step to simply take responsibility for what did happen. Because if you can't take responsibility for what did happen under your watch, it's very difficult to implement any kind of permanent change.
Right, that culture needs to change to put victims first. Jamie, Rachel, great point there. Rachel, Jamie, Morgan, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Certainly, Ryan.
Well, coming up next, explosive charges leveled at the WNBA, all based on player sexuality. Details coming up. The WNBA prides itself on being a league of inclusion, of valuing differences. This week, retired 8-year pro Candace Wiggins challenged that notion in the unlikeliest of ways, setting off a firestorm with disturbing accusations about the league's culture and its players. The former 6th Woman of the Year claims that she was bullied throughout her career for being popular and straight in a league that she alleged was overwhelmingly gay. Me being heterosexual and straight and being vocal in my identity as a straight woman was huge. I would say 98% of the women in the WNBA are gay women. As she claimed her sexual preferences invited harm, she also went on to claim that players cursed at her and deliberately tried to hurt her. The backlash was swift. Chicago Sky center Imani Boyette tweeted that we couldn't categorize the WNBA based on one person's experience. 4-time All-Star Tisha Penicheiro thinks this could be fake news to sell books. And Misty Bass said that she never faced bullying in her 10-year career, noting, "I celebrated my differences." As for Wiggins, 98% comment there is no published data on the sexual preferences of women in the WNBA. And Wiggins later said that she used the figure to be more illustrative than factual.
This was my personal experience. It was how I felt. It was how I perceived things. And it's, that's really just where it comes from.
Now, Wiggins is now pursuing a pro volleyball career and is penning an autobiography. The working title, The WNBA Diaries, based on her experiences as a player. Well, with us to talk more about Candace Wiggins' allegations is Delisha Milton-Jones, 2-time WNBA champion, now an assistant coach at Pepperdine. Her husband, Roland, played basketball overseas. And Michelle Vopel, who is a women's basketball writer for ESPNW and ESPN.com. She's been talking to WNBA players to gauge their reaction to these comments that Candace Wiggins said. All right, guys, great to have you both with us. Delisha, I want to start with you. When you heard these comments, what was your first reaction?
My first reaction was my heart kind of dropped, and I was like, wow, where's all of this coming from? It was rather surprising. I was befuddled and baffled all at the same time, but concerned on a high level as well.
Why concerned?
Concerned because the comments that she was making, the allegations were rather inflammatory, and she did rather put all of us in a box and created a stereotype that is very unpleasant in the eyes of the players that are still playing and former players that have moved on.
And Michelle, what's been the reaction of players across the league?
I think they're really baffled, I think is a good way to describe it, because what Candace said initially, which was in a one-source story in the San Diego newspaper, the newspaper wasn't quoting any other player, past or present, she said this was a culture in the league and made very sweeping statements about the entire league, not just her experiences. Now she's backed that off a little bit to say, oh, this is how I perceive things. But I think all the players are saying, look, if you're saying this is a culture, this is something that it happens to everybody in the league or is league-wide all the time, that's something they, want to comment on, because all the people that I've talked to said that hasn't been their experience.
Has anyone demanded an apology?
I think there's been different blogs that players have put out and statements they've put out where they've, and Imani Boyette's a good example, where she said, she's admired Candace Wiggins all her life and is wondering why she chose to present, these types of statements that were basically maligning the workplace atmosphere of the WNBA.
Now, Delisha, you know her, you know Candace well. If she were watching today and she was hearing your words, hearing your voice today on this show, what message would you send to her about her comments and how it affected you and the league in general and its players?
I would tell Candace, with all the love and respect that I have for her, that her comments were hurtful to a certain extent, but I do understand that that was her experience, and I have respect for that. But I don't want to pass judgment on you, and I would like for her to reach out to the Players Union or to Lisa Borders, the president of the WNBA, and sit down and have a mature conversation about this, because obviously what happened to her was real for her. It contradicts many of the thousands of players that have gone through the WNBA and their experiences, but that experience was unique to her. Until she reveals specific instances that occurred and name names, then everyone's going to kind of assume that this is a little far-fetched and it sounds very fabricated. But I would definitely tell her to reach out to the league and talk this through.
Do you think her comments, I just have a couple seconds left, do you think her comments have diminished the way people look at the WNBA?
Not at all, because I think that the legs that the WNBA stands on for the past 20 years has been one of inclusion and has been one of empowerment. So this one instance will not spoil all the wonderful things that the league has done for women.
All right, Delisha, Michelle, thank you so much. We appreciate you being with us today.
Thank you.
All right, when we come back, the amazing comeback of Matt Shoemaker from this nearly fatal play last season.
Hi, this is Maury Moreland Morrison, here to tell you Geico has more than just great savings. Much more. Geico's been around for more than 75 years, back when they were using Morse code. Sorry, that's just my sense of humor. What's more, with Geico you get 24/7 access to licensed agents on the app, online, or over the phone, so you can talk to them at night or in the morning. So forevermore, just know that no other auto insurer has more than Geico. More power to you. Geico. Expect great savings and a whole lot more.
It's an ACC Big Ten doubleheader tonight on ESPN. 7 p.m., Memphis squares off against Cincinnati, and it's on to the Big Ten. Number 16, Wisconsin, taking on Ohio State. And after Wisconsin and Ohio State at SportsCenter at night with Bucci and Levy. All the NBA deadline deals and highlights from the association back from the All-Star break. Well, with Major League Baseball camps back in full swing, just facing those swings for Angels pitcher Matt Shoemaker is remarkable. Who can forget this moment back in September? Shoemaker struck at 105 miles per hour, nearly killed. Emergency surgery stopping bleeding in his brain. Now, just 5 months later, beating his doctor's estimates, the 30-year-old was back on the hill Wednesday, putting his physical and emotional scars behind him, throwing batting practice without a protective screen, facing 5 hitters during an 8-minute workout. Now, the righty did use protective plastic under his cap, saying afterward that it's a big deal, but I'm glad it didn't feel like a big deal. Well, it's not clear when Shoemaker will be back in the Angels rotation, but just by making that comeback, just by overcoming his obstacles, well, I got to think that's a big deal to fans and folks everywhere. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. That's Outside the Lines. I'm Ryan Smith. We're going to see you again tomorrow, 1 p.m. on ESPN. MLB Commissioner Rob Manfred being our special guest.